I just, there we go. I was just going to ask for recording. Thank you so much. So welcome partners. Happy Thursday. Today we're going to be doing a live webinar for 5202's new updated quarterly reporting. I wanted to preface this with just a statement around availability. We want to prioritize, and will continue to prioritize making sure that we make ourselves available for you all. So this is not, a one-time face-to-face interaction. If you would like to schedule follow-up meetings with us, please feel free to ask for those. We also plan on doing office hours in the very near future, so please look out for that. Next slide, please. All right, so here's a breakdown of the main changes. So before the change, through March of this year, 2023, we were asking you all, our partners, to complete quarterly expenditure reports, quarterly progress reports, and monthly progress reports. So we had a lot of reporting going on. Moving forward, beginning in April, as of April 30th, we're going to be asking you all as our partners to complete one consolidated report per quarter on expenditures and progress. We're doing this to simplify reporting and to consolidate information into one source so that it's better for both you all and for OHA in terms of data collection. So we're moving from this slew of monthly and quarterly reports to one quarterly report. There's no more monthly reporting, just to be clear. Next slide, please. All right, so here's an overview of the new consolidated report. What is this new report? This new report will consolidate your information as partners on expenditures, including expenses and descriptions, as well as housing investment progress, including success stories and barriers. And we really want to highlight those if we can. There is a place in the report for you to include that. When will this template be provided? So after today's webinar, you all should be sent a copy of the new reporting template, and you'll also receive a link or a copy of this recording. So when is the report due? The next submission is going to be due on April 30th of 2023, so in approximately 2-ish weeks from now. And that's for the January 1st through March 31st quarter, so that period of time. You'll have 30 days after each quarter is complete to submit your quarterly reports. So another note is that these changes are not retroactive. You do not have to go back and redo reports or anything like that. This is going forward, so there's no need to resubmit any reports that you've done already. Next slide, please. All right, so this is what the first tab of the new report looks like, the new reporting document. This is the instructions tab. OHA's new template contains a detailed instructions tab that outlines objectives, eligible activities, reporting timelines, and a summary of each tab. So you will see in this screenshot that it has grant program objectives, eligible program activities, and this is pulled from the original RFGA that you all responded to with your proposals. It has information about quarterly reporting and the dates that they are due, and for what date periods those are applicable to. Next slide, please. Okay, so tab 1. Now we're going to have 2 slides about tab 1. This is the first slide for part 1. So you'll fill out the blue cells only. The gray cells will auto-populate as applicable. So think of the blue cells as partner cells and the gray cells as OHA cells. There's one significant change to call out in this section. OHA is asking for expenditures by category for each month of the quarter. So these are no longer aggregated together across the 3 months. So we'll ask for a breakdown of expenditures per month. Next slide, please. And here is the second part of tab 1. So the second change to the expenditure report is on the expenditure descriptions. For any expenditures over $1,000, we're going to ask you all to give a description on these expenses in these free text fields below where it's blue. And hopefully you all can see where it's blue. I know sometimes screens are a little bit different and color shows up differently. Next slide, please. So here's tab 2 of our progress of the reporting form. This is the progress report form. The second tab will include the progress report, which features a revised format and new questions on impact, such as initial date of occupancy and number of beds or number of units. One note is that we request that progress updates be by project as reported on your grant agreement. So for example, if you're purchasing 3 apartment complexes, OHA asks for 3 different progress reports. Next slide, please. And this is tab 3. Tab 3 is for certification. So like the expenditure reports, we're going to ask that an authorized signer for your organization certifies that the report is complete and accurate. And once again, the blue cells will be what you'll fill out, and the gray cells should auto-populate. And all of those are at the bottom. I believe that we have another slide. So next slide, please. Why are progress reports so important? So I don't think we have to really go too deep into why these are important. You all have been doing these for a long time and have a lot of experience with this and understand how impactful data can be, but I just wanted to go over a couple of points why this is so important. So we know that reports can be time consuming and an administrative burden, but it remains a critical way for us to demonstrate the program's community impact. Success stories are highlighted on OHA's website and through media features, of course, with your permission. Through these reports, we can find areas where we as an organization, as OHA, should shift or tailor support to better serve your organization. And these reports provide us as the state of Oregon or state of Oregon policymakers with key information needed to develop strategies and to make policy decisions for the future that can impact work in our community. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Vidal. Vidal is going to do a live report walkthrough of our new reporting template.
Thank you, Jack. Hello, everyone. My name is Vidal. I'm an OHA contractor working on House Bill 5202. And we'll be doing a live walkthrough of the updated reports, talking about the major changes as well as the added functionality we have within the file. Can everybody see my screen? Perfect. All right. So on the instructions tab here, some of the major updates that we have made, like Jack was mentioning, the overall grant program background information. So talking about the objectives, what the eligible program activities are, as well as the report period, start dates, end dates, and due dates. So this information here has not changed from the previous templates. Moving on to the second section here on the instructions tab is the cell color legend. And this is going to be something you'll see on all 3 of the tabs. Like Jack was mentioning, the blue shaded cells are the cells where we do ask for to be populated and filled out by the individual completing the report. And those gray cells are formulas, links, or just reference information that is there for, that doesn't need to be edited by the person completing the report. The other thing I did want to highlight, and this is something we'll share more information in the coming days, but we are in the process of standing up a House Bill 5202 specific shared inbox, where we request that this report and any questions be sent to, and we'll be providing more information on that as well in the coming days. And then this bottom section here of the instructions tab has information on each of the data fields which are listed in the report, the type of field that that data field is, whether it's manual entry, a drop-down selection, or a formula-driven cell, as well as instructions or descriptions on what we're asking for in that data field, or if it's a formula-driven cell, where that information is being populated from. So the field types, we've tried to incorporate as many drop-down selections as possible, just to make the make it easier to fill out this report in general. And the one thing I do want to call out is we've listed the data fields in order that they show up on the form itself. And we do ask that you complete the form in the order that we have the data fields listed in, just because some of the data fields are dependent on previous selections made in the form. So for example, one of those dependencies is grant agreement number. On the organization, grant agreement numbers will show depending on the organization selected. So if you do not choose the organization, you won't be able to use the to manually enter a grant agreement number. But for example, if your organization has 3 different grant agreements under this grant program, the dropdown will only show those 3 grant agreements. And we have the same thing for all of the other tabs, and type of field and the information that we're requesting in that field. Moving on to tab 1. Here, this top section of the grantee and project information, we asked for the person filling out this report to provide the county or CMHP that their organization is working with. And this is a manual entry field. Organization, this is a drop-down list. So we ask that you choose the organization that you're a part of. We also ask for a project description or name. And this is just something short, a few words to talk about the major projects or initiatives that your organization is working with under this grant agreement. So this can be something, for example, if you're in the process of purchasing 2 apartment complexes, but also providing long-term rental assistance, we would ask that you provide a project description along the lines of apartment complex 1, 2, long-term rental assistance project, but something so that we're able to easily identify what those distinct projects are. Below here, we ask for the grant agreement number and just some contact information and information on who prepared this report. Contact name listed here will be used in case we have any questions on the report or have any clarifying or want to clarify anything. This section here to the right will have the report period that this report was created for, as well as the due date of that report and the email address we would request you to send a completed report to. The second section here for the budget and expenditures information, this has all of the individual budget categories. And like Jeff was mentioning, we did consolidate this table to ask for all 3 of the monthly, all 3 months worth of expenditures by individual month. The quarterly report before had this monthly breakdown below, so we just consolidated into one table. So folks can report all that information on this one here by budget category. And then the biggest change, one change you'll see is that the total funding provided and previous amount expended rows are gray. And the reason for that is once you select your organization and your grant agreement number, the approved budget template amounts will automatically populate for each of your budget categories, as well as the previous amount expended. So for example, the Q4 reports that we'll be sending out at the end of this week will have all of the monthly and the quarterly expenditure reports data built in automatically. So if you've already spent, let's say, $1 million in repurpose or build new treatment facilities budget category, you'll see your total funding amount once you select your organization and grant agreement number, as well as what you reported in your Q3 and Q2 reports. Just to show how that would look, I'm going to go ahead and choose organization and an example organization and example grant agreement number. So you can see how that information will be populated. And we hope this will be just an added functionality to make it easier to fill these reports out. So you don't have to go and, pull up your exhibit D every time you're filling out this report. This will automatically have the information that is stored in our system. And one thing I do want to say too is if the numbers that are pulling here are not accurate, please reach out and we can work together and make sure that the report is pulling the most accurate information. For example, in case there's a budget template update that needs to be processed or anything like that, we can take care of that on our side. There is some functionality here as well built in to show total remaining funding. So in case there is a situation where an organization spends more than what was allocated in their budget, there'll be some data validations to make that, to call that out and show within the file. Moving on to the expenditure document, expenditure descriptions. Here we have just an example of the information we're looking for. Like I was mentioning earlier, we're only asking for descriptions for expenditures where the individual expense was over $1,000. And kind of like what we're asking for is what the amount was and how it furthered the grant program objectives or progress on the project that you're specifically working on. And then for the amount expended, I do see a question in the chat here. So what we'll do is every quarter, we'll consolidate all of the information, update this file, and send out a new file, which will have all of the previous quarter's expenses included in there, so that your organization has a running log of previous amount expended, and that column or that row is updated with the most recent information we have. So this one, for example, is for Q3, but we'll send out a Q4 report, a Q1 report, 2024, etc. Moving on to tab 2. So tab 2 is the what we had in the old monthly progress form. And here we have the organization. Again, this is all pulling from tab 1, and project name and grant agreement number. And then what we ask for here is just information broken out by the main projects that or the major projects that your organization is working towards. So in this example that we've provided here, this organization is working on 3 different projects, 2 apartment complexes that are being repurposed into treatment facilities, and 1 long-term rental assistance project. And we ask that for all of the questions on this tab, this kind of structure of breaking out the update for each project is followed, just so that we can easily keep track of the significant progress made towards each of those individual projects. And one of the main differences as well is we've taken the monthly progress report and consolidated some of the questions. So you won't see the tables that were in the monthly report before, but the questions are mostly the same. They've just been combined into one field. And then the last tab here is the certification. So like I was mentioning earlier, just we ask this to be completed by an authorized agent of the organization. Doesn't have to be somebody different than the person who put this report together. So the same person can fill this report out and send it over. We just ask that that person be an authorized agent that fills this section out as well. So those are the 3 tabs that we've made. Again, this instructions tab has a lot of the specifics on what we're looking for each data field. So if you are working on one of these individual cells and aren't too sure on the data piece or the type of information we're requesting, it will be on the instructions tab. And we hope that this will make it easier and make it a smoother process to fill these reports out. So that is the report. I think we can open it up to questions now if there are any.
I see a question from Christina from Marion County. No, the monthly reports are no longer due. This is going to combine both the quarterly and the monthly reports into one. So you just have this quarterly report due. Thanks for your question. Carla, I also see your question regarding taking time to talk about other topics in the report. So if we have time after we've gotten through all report related questions, I think we're happy to stop the recording and maybe spend the remaining time OHA staff addressing any questions you might have. But the complicated thing about that is that everyone will be in the room. So if you don't mind everyone listening to your questions, then that shouldn't be a problem. But I also wanted to say, we have plenty of time in our schedules to make time to do individual meetings. You're welcome to call me. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. Sorry, I'm just reading questions as they come in. Jen, I see your question. Are you referring to 5024 funding? Because this does not relate to any of the 5024 funding, although if you are braiding funds, we do ask that that be, indicated in your progress reports. I think that would be helpful for us to see how that's going. I hope that answers your question. David, I see your question. We should be sending this out in the next few days. Vidal, do you know when these are being sent out?
Yeah, I think we're targeting for tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, so we should have these out to you all by tomorrow. Thanks for that question, David. Yes, Jen, please do email me. Thank you.
And I will say for the reports that we send out tomorrow, we'll be including all of the monthly and quarterly reports that have been submitted so far. However, if there is any discrepancies in the amount in this row here, previous amount expended, please let us know, and we can work together to update the information so it reflects the true amount that has been expended so far.
And as a side note, for CMHPs that have updated their Exhibit D and are in the process of working with us on amending your grant agreement, that for those who have updated their Exhibit D, like in the last month or so since I've been working with 5202, that information has not been populated into the data used for these reports, as we have not amended those contracts yet. So please be mindful that this report is for, I would look at it as a way to report on the prior to that Exhibit D changing, because most Exhibit Ds that I'm aware of that have changed have only just recently changed. So that shouldn't affect the data too much, but if anyone has questions, please let us know. David, that's a great question. So David's asking, some of our money is committed to a project that may not be spent until 2024. Anything different in how to handle that? I would say just have that reflected in your report that, some funding, and whatever you project that amount of funding to be, that will not be spent until 2024. I would just state that in the appropriate place in the report. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, I think that would be something that would be great to put on the progress report form. That way we can see and be aware as we're getting closer to 2024, the total funding remaining. If we haven't seen a majority of that spent down, we can go back to the progress report and see the reason why there's still a large funding remaining amount there for that one specific budget category.
Yeah, and I also want to add to that, thank you, Vidal, that if you're experiencing barriers, no matter what those barriers are, we love to see how that all ties together. For example, if it's because that money is committed, but you can't expend it for whatever reason, putting in the barrier section why that is really helps us out. And we know that sometimes it's not something that can really be addressed, but it's good for us to track. Carla, I'm just reading your question. Yeah, so if you have external factors like that, definitely include that in the report, in the progress report. And also feel free to email me or email our inbox, and that'll get to me. I would also say, if you want to meet and just chat about what's going on, please feel free to give me a call, request a meeting. I want to stress that or emphasize rather, that we are prioritizing meeting with you all above pretty much everything else, because we want to make sure that we're providing you with enough assistance for you to feel like you're supported in this work that you're doing, because this is a lot of funding and these are a lot of moving parts, and we totally understand that.
One thing I do want to mention as well, for the consolidated report form, in the email we send out tomorrow with the form and the template, we will provide an example of a fully completed template as well, showing the key piece of information that we're looking for, how much of a description we would need, and some of the key data points that sometimes are missed, but we will still need to be completed in the form. So we'll have that and share that with the group as well on our email.
Yes, this will be available as a recording. I believe a link will be sent out. Vidal, do you know if it's yeah, so we'll send out a
Yep.
link. Looks like Jen has a question. As we work with subcontractors/partners, it'll be really helpful in the future to get a quick turnaround back to the next quarter's report with a month or more before it's due. Does that feel reasonable to your team? Can you elaborate on that question? Are you asking us to send the quarterly reports a little bit earlier to you so that you can fill them out a little bit more ahead of time? Can we unmute Jen, please?
And give me 1 second. I'm going to find you in this list here and I'll meet you.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for bearing with us, everyone.
Thanks, Jack. The way this works now is it goes back and forth between us. So we can't start preparing the next quarter until we receive a document from you all. And we have other partners who will be the ones managing some of these funds, is that through subcontractors. So we'll need time for them to have the report to see what you've documented, especially because we're buying the same thing with 2 different sets of funds from the same office, both House bills. So which funds go in which report? They're just going to need to have time to be able to do that and validate it before it gets back. And if we don't have it until 2 weeks before it's due, that doesn't leave us enough time to work with our partners to do that accurately and to have it attested. That also has to go through a process to make sure the right person is the attesting after it's been assembled. So we need time. And in a reporting process that's iterative like this, where we can't start to complete the document until we receive it from you all, we need time. We can see what our deadlines are. I'm asking, what is your deadline to get it back to us, and what's reasonable? How should we plan? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for your question, and thank you for elaborating a little bit more on that so that I had a good understanding. I also wanted to point out that Marie in the chat also kind of made a comment of, can we have more time to complete the form? We used to have a minimum of 45 days to report forms. So I would say, in response, Jen, in response to your question, we will do our best to make sure that we get forms to you all as soon as we can reconcile data so that the forms are updated. I think, and Vidal, you can feel free to chime in if you'd like. So we're working on process improvements so that we can get these reports out as soon as possible. I don't know what the initial turnaround time is going to look like, at least the first time, but you know, the 45 days I think sounds reasonable. One of the issues that we have is that in the grant agreements, it says, you know, I believe it's a 30-day turnaround time from the time that the reporting period ends to when the report is due. If partners, if any of you are having issues with getting a report completed, I don't want you to stress about it. What I want you to do is send us an email to our inbox and let us know that you're struggling with getting the report in by the due date. And we will work with you to get it in a reasonable time. We're not gonna like slap your wrist or anything because there are barriers that you're facing in getting it in on time. We want to make sure that that's a collaborative effort. And if there's something on our end that's holding you up, it's totally reasonable for us to work together to make sure that things get in, even if it's late. Obviously, it's not ideal to have things come in late because it backs up the process. But like I said, we want to work together. This is a collaborative effort. We recognize that reporting is no easy feat and that there are a lot of moving parts, especially with subcontractors in the mix. So, Jen, I hope that kind of satisfies your question. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like us to answer that question more internally and have a more laid out process or timeline for when we can get these to you all on a quarterly basis. Jen, would 45 days, like Marie said in the chat, be ample time, do you think?
One thing I do, just in terms of us getting the updated forms back to you all for completion, is targeting to have that sent on the 1 month before the end of the report period. So for example, for the Q2 report, let's say that is from October 1 to December 31st, that Q2 report would be due January 30th. And then in February, we would be compiling all of the Q2 reports. So the Q3 template that would be covering Jan 1 through March 31st and would be due, assuming the 30 days, on April 30th. We would be targeting to send that out to you all March 1st. That way you have 2 months to put together the quarterly report. And we, yeah.
Thank you for that, Vidal. Does that 2-month period feel accessible for folks? It's okay to give like a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or you can message us. And if situations change and that's not accessible for folks, we can absolutely work together to try and make sure that that does work out.
Yeah, another thing I want to add too, I know the report looks different from the previous quarterly report, but I would say 90% of the information that we're asking for is still the same that we were asking for in the previous quarterly report template and the monthly template. So once you send the templates out and you all get a chance to go through it in detail and everything like that, I think you'll see that the information is more or less the same in terms of what we're asking for from the previous reports as well.
David, I see your comment about the report by 4:30. Just if there's an issue with getting it in on time, especially this first round when we're using this new template, please just send me a quick email and say, hey, we anticipate needing another 2-3 weeks. And then we just log that and make sure that that gets communicated amongst our team, because we understand that like with this new reporting template, there's learning curve. There's also like an information transmission curve, especially if you're working with subcontractors. So thank you for mentioning that, David. I know we're getting a little bit close on time and it's starting to be lunchtime for folks. If there are any additional questions that we don't get to during this webinar, like we said, please let us know. I'm reachable by phone and email, and we can set up meetings. Thank you, Heather. So it's not sounding like we have any other questions. I just wanted to kind of offer one last call for questions. If folks feel more comfortable verbalizing questions, feel free to raise your hand. Down at the bottom where you see it says reactions, you can click raise hand and you can feel free to do that and we'll unmute folks and you can ask verbal questions if you'd like to. Thank you, Judy. Looks like Colette has an answer, a question. Is there a version number or date on the template I can use to make sure I have the latest template? So there is down at the very bottom, I forget of which tab, I think it's the instructions tab. It'll say very small print when it was last updated. I believe the one we currently have says April 2023, and we'll make sure that those dates get updated. It's a great question. Thank you.
Yep. And when we send the file out, we'll send file with the reporting period that the most recent information is on. So you'll be able to see, okay, this is the Q4 2023 template that I should be using to report April through June expenses, for example.
Yes, and I believe that is indicated in tab 1. Yes, Colette. So everyone will be receiving the newest template by tomorrow, we believe. So you will definitely be on the list. Thanks for asking. Looks like Tammy has a question. If there happens to be a prior period adjustment, how should that be documented? Prior period adjustment. Can we unmute Tammy? Tammy, would you mind talking a little bit about prior period adjustment? I just want to make sure I know what you mean by prior period adjustment. Or you can type it in the chat, that works too.
Yeah, hi, this is Tammy. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Okay, okay. In the expenditure section, sometimes we may decide to reallocate an expense to a different funding source. And so we might want to, you know, if a different expenditure comes up that we'd want to apply instead, you would do a prior period, you know, want to reallocate that expense. So how would we handle something like that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think we may need to work on that a little bit internally because that is coming up. And just as a side note, if you are reallocating any expenses into a different category or for a different project, we do request that you let us know in writing so that we can work on that together and get your grant agreement updated to reflect that change in budget.
Well, it might not affect the total expense to it. But if we would have like put a detail on there that we spent this, we purchased something for $1,000, but then later decided, well, let's charge that now to a different funding source, because we're combining funding for some of our projects as well. And so it wouldn't be, it probably wouldn't require a rebudget. It would just be an internal reallocation of an expense, and to which, you know, we would have documented to you in a prior report. You know, when you're asking for that
Yeah.
additional detail.
Yep. So for that, we can work together to update the affected report to show, like, for example, if that $1,000 expense, if half of it's going to a different project under a different grant program, and we want to revise that number, we can work together to get that number revised in the template, and then have a finalized report that has that update included. And then we can update our internal systems as well to reflect that expense amount update as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vidal.
I do want to bring up as well that we're targeting to have an office hours session in about 2 weeks. I believe it's on the 24th, the invite to come, and we can have similar to how we're doing now, right? Just asking, answering specific questions on the template itself. So once you do have a chance to look at the report and begin populating it, if you do come across any questions that you want to just talk over on a call, we're going to have that office hour session for that. Or if you do have anything, please feel free to send us an email, or we can set up an individual call before that as well.